I was teaching public speaking. There were 34 students in the class, and it was very difficult to get through that in a short space of time. I was at home with my son. He was at the college as well as a student, and I had to go in that night and do public speaking. Before we left, though, we got some food to eat, and we sat there and watched television. So we were sitting there looking at this thing on television, knowing we had to go pretty quickly, but then something happened on the story. What happened was the phone rang, and we looked at it and said, "What's that about?" It was Hawkeye's father from America. And he looked at the phone and started talking and listening, and something looked bad in his face. And when he put the phone down, he didn't want to see the other guy, but he wanted to say to somebody, "Imagine that. My father's ill. He has to have surgery. He might die." And I never told him I loved him. That night, I went to the college to teach the course, and before I did anything else, I said to 34 students, I said, before we do anything else out of textbooks and start talking about preaching and all the rest of it, let me just say that I saw something on television tonight before I got here. Maybe you did too. In MASH, Hawkeye, the phone call, his father being ill and might die. And you know what he said? He said, "Imagine that. All those years, and I've never said I loved him. Now he might die." Let me ask you a question in this class tonight. How many of you in this class can say to your mother or your father, "I love you"? I want you to think about that. What I said about this thing on television. Think about that. And I want you to think enough that when I ask you the question, you'll know what I'm asking. Ask that question, you answer it. Here it is. Can you tell your mother or your father that you love them? Start now. You got a half hour. When the half hour ended, I said, "Okay, let's talk. Let's talk." How many of you out of 34 would have a hard time of telling their mother or father that you love them? How many do you think? 34. 34 students at a college said they didn't think that they'd be able to say right in their eyes at any given time, "Dad, I love you. Mom, I love you." Interesting. Very interesting. But it's school. It's college. Now, I want you all to get together. We have another hour. I want you to say why you can't speak to your mother or your father. Give that a shot, okay? Talk. And they all did. And they brought it back again at the end. And when they did, I said, "Okay, let's talk now." And I said, "Get this group, that group, that group, and all of you figure out what it is." And they all figured out what would cause them to not be able to talk to their mother in that way or their father in that way. And they all started, and they got an ending point. The number one reason for which they couldn't talk to their parents in that way was, if I say that to my father and he cries, then what do I do? And that was essentially the end of it, because the whole class felt the same thing. They couldn't really realize how it could happen. And it came from not a big deal textbook. It didn't come from a wonderful thing on television. It came, well, that was pretty darn good. But it came from that show. And there are people I meet in this town and meet in the college who say, "Don't read that kind of stuff. Don't listen to that." What are you talking about? When he came out about that, talking about his father and the fact that he might die, and what you're talking about now, and what I'm talking about now, is worth talking about. Love. You love that man. You love that woman. Thank them for being alive. And thank you for what you can do in that family.